Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Don't turn it off.
Seven years after the original Terminator, we finally got a sequel. Now, back in 1991, 7 years between movies was quite some considerable distance. I mean, these days we don't really think anything of it. It seemed to be a craze, with the likes of Blade Runner and films like that getting sequels after 20, 30 years. So, yeah, back then it was something to have a sequel as big as this 7 years after the original. Thankfully, it was pretty damn awesome, it must be said. Now, I never, unfortunately, got to see this at the cinema when it originally came out. I have seen it recently, though, in a double bill. I think I mentioned that in my Terminator review. And I gotta say, on the big screen, man alive, this was just awesome. So, obviously, story is, once again, Skynet send a Terminator back in time. This time the T-1000, liquid metal, shape-shifting guy, to go after John Connor directly. And this time, John Connor sends his own Terminator, the T-800, which has been reprogrammed back in time to protect himself. So, similar setup to the first film, but a lot more depth, must be said. There's a lot more going on here than there was in the first film. And that's not a diss on the first film. The first film did what it needed to do brilliantly. It's a classic, absolute classic. But what Cameron does here, same as what he does with the Aliens sequel, is he takes the original and he builds on it. He doesn't come back with nothing to say. He comes back with purpose. He comes back with a reason. There's a reason for this film's existence beyond just making money, which is that it actually has a lot more to say. Delving deep into that theme about fate versus free will, how much are we really in charge of our own destiny. Couple that with the theme of fatherhood. He came off the back of Aliens. I did The Abyss as well before this, but in Aliens, he dealt with that theme of motherhood, whereas here, he switches to fatherhood. There's a definite kind of theme of fatherhood in this, with John Connor having a lot of kind of dads or would-be dads that came and went over the years. And this Terminator, it turns out, this programmed machine, turns out, in Sarah Connor's own words, to be the sanest choice in an insane world, to be a father, because, like I say, lacking that free will, because he's programmed to do what he's programmed to do, he'll never leave John, he'll never abandon him, he'll never shout at him and all that. And it's just, yeah, it's a really great look at fatherhood through that concept of free will and fate and determinism and all that lot. But on top of that, just flipping good action, really great action set pieces that hold up today. It's just amazing. Some of the stuff that is on show back then when it was filmed in 91. I mean, I remember it really blowing me away when I first saw it on video. But again, watching it now, it still looks like something that has been shot today. It looks better than most things that are shot today, to be quite honest. And most of it's practical. I know we've got the CGI stuff with the T-1000, but all the explosions, the car chases, the things hitting into buildings and this, that and the other, it's all practical stuff. There's a lot here that I feel like if it was done today would be done using CGI and would look worse for it. It would look weightless. Brilliantly directed by Cameron. He certainly knows how to put together an action sequence, that's for sure. It's good to see the switch as well between the evil T-800 of the first film, evil, and the good one in this side. Like that reaction that we get from Sarah Connor when she first sees the T-800 in this film is absolutely priceless. I love that moment where she sees him and she just, yeah, she knows what's coming, but actually she doesn't. And it's just, yeah, the film does that quite a bit in the sense that it plays on your expectations of everything that was done in the first one and twists them. Again, Cameron having a reason to come back, taking this character and doing something different with it. Not the same thing, but something different. Linda Hamilton is absolutely fantastic in this. I really liked her in the first film. I liked that we saw that kind of development, that journey she goes on to become someone who's a bit more hardened. In here, she's just as tough as nails. She's in a loony bin. She's, you know, she tried blowing up the factory where the T-800 was kind of taken, and you know, they denied its existence, and she now looks like a crazy person because she's tried to blow the place up. Her performance in this is brilliant, physically as well as, you know, just like emotionally. She clearly put a lot of work in. Again, this is something where a lot of actresses these days don't really think twice about kind of putting that kind of work in. You know, they've joined the boys club. I hate to use that terminology, but you get what I mean by it. Yeah, loads of women these days work out to go on screen and do action type stuff. But again, like I say, going back to 91, to Terminator 2, it was unusual to see someone with Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton's physique in this film. To see a woman who had clearly done some working out, clearly could have a fight with most men. Yeah, that was unusual to see at the time. But it makes this character so much more believable. And Hamilton, again, like I say, owns it. There's some really great scenes with her. Like I say, just not just the physical stuff, but the emotional stuff as well. Like when she goes to take out Miles Bennett Dyson, and she's just in full-on warrior mode. She's proper kitted out, looks like a soldier, believable, it must be said, as a soldier. And then just that moment where she realizes that she's losing a sense of her humanity, that if she goes through with this action and assassinates this guy, that she's essentially no better than the machines. And you see all this in her face. She doesn't say it, it comes out in her body language, that slow realization. You know, and she backs off slowly and she tells him to shh, 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 and it's brilliantly played. As is often the case with particularly action films, but sci-fi films as well, you know, this covering all the bases. I think performances in these kind of movies tend to get overlooked because people come to them for the you know, the big action set pieces and things like that. But yeah, Hamilton's performance here is absolutely stellar. Edward Furlong is great too. He has, at this age, when he did this film, there's something a little bit kind of feminine about him. Maybe because his voice hasn't quite broken yet, but he's also very believable as this streetwise, tough kid who's, yeah, broken a few laws maybe. It comes out of Furlong, I think. I think he was a great find at the time. I don't think any of the John Connors we've had since have been on the level of Furlong. And Furlong, you know, his career hasn't been particularly great since. You know, he did American History X, but beyond that, his career's kind of gone nowhere. And it's a shame because, as I say, he does give a genuinely good performance here, and there's something about him, about his street smarts and whatnot, that make you really believe this is the John Connor that will become the guy who's been prophesied of the future, so to speak. So yeah, I don't think any of the people, even Christian Bale, who's one of my favourite actors, I don't think did quite as good a job as what Furlong did here at a young age. Obviously, he's playing the kid version. It's very different once you become an adult. Whether he'd be able to do that now and give as good as he gave back then is debatable. But yeah, for this film, he's perfect casting. And then we've got Robert Patrick as the T-1000. Again, an actor who, his career has a nosedive, but he's not been quite as prolific as some people who've done at such high-profile roles as this. Like, he's certainly not gone on to have the career that Arnie had, for example. But I'm kind of a fan of Robert Patrick. That's probably mostly got something to do with the X-Files. I'm a big X-Files fan. But this film is just... His role here is iconic, and it's because of him. It's because of the way he plays it. Again, it's that physical performance. It's a lot harder, I think, to do these kind of roles than and again we'll get into that in the third one because the third one clearly shows that, but just doing that physical performance where you're not relying on dialogue or anything like that, it's all in the body language, I think it's much harder than maybe it gets credit for. And I think Robert Patrick does a really fantastic job here. Like if you look at the scenes when he's running and he's not breathing, he's not out of, and they probably filmed that, or those scenes like that multiple times, because you never just film something once and then that's it. So all these scenes where he's running and jumping over things and chasing after the cars, there's no heavy breathing going on. It's all in the eyes. He's just staring, he's tracking his prey and he's going for it. And yeah, it's a really great physical performance. And the character of the T-1000 is just outstanding as well. Has been pretty much ripped off in many different TV shows and films since, X-Files being one of them. We got the alien bounty hunter in the X-Files, which we wouldn't have had if it was not for the T-1000 with the whole shape-shifting ability. So yeah, great special effects on the T-1000 as well that again still hold up. There's a few little bits that have dated, but for the most part Cameron doesn't overdo it. He keeps things simple, and as a result it still holds up. Like the scene when he comes up out of the floor, out of the checkered floor, and turns into the guy, and it's just really great work. Something that I love about this film as well is that the character of Dyson, Miles Dyson, so he's the guy whose research essentially leads to the creation of Skynet, which ultimately really leads to Judgment Day. They never demonize this guy. They don't make him out to be some mustache twirling, megalomaniacal corporate douchebag. At the very least, take away the megalomania and all that kind of stuff. At the very least, if they did this character in another franchise, in another movie somewhere, you can guarantee they would make him the corporate douchebag, the guy who's chasing the bucks and all that. Here, Cameron doesn't do that. He makes him a family man. He creates Skynet by accident. It's that whole thing about the creation of the atom bomb. He's doing it out of research, out of a love for science, and you end up creating something that is very, very destructive. And we see that play out, and we see just how sick it makes the guy feel, and it really makes you sympathise for him. So when he meets his end, quite heroically, it must be said. It gives him a bit of redemption that it's arguable or questionable as to whether he needs redemption, because as I say, what he does out more out of an accident than intention. But yeah, it makes you warm to the guy. It makes you feel for his family, and it just sucks you into the character. So he doesn't just become this second tier pointless character that's only there to service the greater story but doesn't really have much depth. No, he's a fully rounded human being in his own right, and when he cops it, you genuinely feel sad for the guy. Something that I didn't mention in my review for the first film is the music. We get the same composer back here, and he does a fantastic job. I actually prefer his score here to what he did in the first film, which was equally great. It's such a memorable score, and yeah, whenever I've watched these first two films, I always come away humming it for days. I watched this a couple of weeks ago now, and I'm still humming it. Now, as I say, I did go and see the theatrical cut of this at the cinema in a double bill, which I absolutely loved. But a week before I did that, I didn't even know the double bill was going to be playing, to be honest. So I might not have done this had I known, but I'm glad that I did. Which is that a week before I went to this double bill, I watched these two movies, the first one and the second one. But the second one, I watched the extended cut, actually the extended special edition. So you got the theatrical cut, you got the special edition, and then you got the extended special edition. And now, after having seen all three of these cuts, I've got to say, this is one of those rare occasions where I will say that I think the theatrical cut is the best. Now, there are some things, some elements in the extended cut which I like, but they're not necessarily necessary. I don't believe they need to be there. So there's a scene in the extended cut in which basically they're messing around with the Terminator's chip. They take his chip out because they want to switch on his learning processor. And there's a moment where Sarah Connor is seriously considering just smashing the chip and doing away with the Terminator altogether. And it kind of shows you a bit of her state of mind. I don't think we need it, to be honest. It's a nice scene. I like how it plays out. It also shows us a little bit of how the inner workings of the Terminator go, which is quite fascinating. But yeah, it's not needed. In the theatrical cut, we get a line of dialogue in which Terminator says he's a learning machine, so we can infer from that he learns. That's probably the strongest of the scenes that were cut from the theatrical edition. There's some other bits, like a bit with Michael Bihn's Kyle Reese coming back in a bit of a dream sequence with Sarah Connor. I used to like it. When I first watched it, I liked it mostly because it was nice to have Michael Biehn back as that character. But there is that element of kind of craziness a bit, because the thing is, Sarah Connor isn't crazy, you know. Everything she's been through was real. She's in a mental home because people have put her there. They've decided she's crazy, but she ain't crazy. So having this dream sequence, I get the emotional attachment there. I get what it's dealing with. But for me personally, one, it weakens the character because it kind of puts her onus to get things done purely on her love for Kyle Reese, rather than just having that strength of will to do it herself. And two, it kind of gives her a little bit of that craziness vibe, like maybe she does need to be in a mental institution, and she doesn't, quite frankly, because everything she's been saying is true. So yeah, I don't know. It's a nice scene. Again, like I say, it's one of those where it's like it's nice to watch. It's nice to see what was cut out, but it's just not necessary. And when I watched the theatrical cut after the extended special edition, which has a terrible ending, I must say, they swapped out the ending in the extended special edition as well, with this horrible sequence in which we see Sarah Connor sitting in the park with her family, her grandkids, and she looks up. They've aged her up and the makeup looks horrible. It's just, yeah, it doesn't beat that ending of just seeing the road flash by with a little voiceover, which has, yeah. Don't like the ending on the extended special edition. So for me, theatrical cut is much better paced, and it jettisons a lot of stuff that, to be honest, we just didn't need. So for me, in future, I think when I come to this film, it will be the theatrical cut that I watch. I give it a 5 out of 5, and it doesn't really matter which cut. To be honest, I would still give it a 5 just because of how amazingly choreographed everything is. It's one of the best action movies of all time. It's one of the best sci-fi movies of all time. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. Yeah, it's an astounding piece of work, and it truly marked James Cameron out as one of the best directors in Hollywood. So yeah, 5 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Have you seen Terminator 2? I certainly hope so. Leave your thoughts about the film down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, crack in.